The stars were quiet that night, spread across the black canvas of space like distant diamonds. Captain Eric Vance's ship glided through the emptiness with practiced ease. The hum of the engine was the only sound in the cockpit, a steady rhythm that kept his nerves calm. He had seen many strange things in the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for what he had just discovered. It had started as a routine mission, a minor supply run to a remote sector near the edge of the Drathan Expanse, a desolate area rarely visited by humans. Sensors had picked up a faint energy signature on a tiny moon too small to hold anything significant, or so the chart said. Curiosity and the kind of stubbornness that had saved Eric more times than he could count had driven him there. The moon's surface was jagged, littered with sharp rocks and deep craters. His ship's landing thrusters kicked up clouds of silver dust as he descended. The terrain was eerily silent. No signs of life, no movement, no sound except the wind that whispered across the barren rocks. He had expected nothing, but then he saw it. A small figure crouched near a broken crater, barely moving. At first he thought it was a strange rock formation, but the way it twitched, the way it seemed to watch him, made his heart skip. He activated the ship's scanners. The readings were faint but unmistakable. Biological life, but nothing like he had ever seen. The child looked fragile, no taller than a human toddler, but with features that made Eric pause. The skin was smooth, almost translucent, with a faint shimmer in the low light. Eyes that were too large for the small face reflected the stars above. Intelligent, alert, and oddly human in their expression. Its hands were delicate, with thin fingers ending in tips that seemed to glow faintly. Eric approached cautiously. Every instinct told him to be careful. He had been trained to handle first contacts, but this was different. This was not a scouting mission, not an encounter with a known species. This was something entirely unknown, and in the depths of his chest, a strange feeling grew. Something between awe and fear. The child did not move away. It simply watched, tilting its head as if studying him. Eric knelt slowly, speaking softly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The words felt almost useless in the void between them, but he had to try. The child responded in its own way, raising one small hand toward him. A faint pulse of light ran along its arm, and the air seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Eric's breath caught. This was no ordinary life form. Something about the child seemed connected, as if it carried knowledge and power far beyond its appearance. He hesitated. He knew the laws. Bringing an alien life form, especially a child, into human space, or worse, the alien empire's territory, was forbidden. The empire was strict, and humans were tolerated only under careful observation. Contact with unknown alien species without approval could start conflicts. Yet, looking at the child, alone, frightened, and clearly intelligent, Eric felt a pull he could not resist. He lifted the child carefully, cradling it as he would a human baby. The glow in its skin dimmed slightly, but the eyes remained fixed on him, curious, unafraid. Eric whispered again, "I'll take care of you."
"You're safe with me." The return to his ship was tense.
Every movement was measured. The child seemed to sense danger, tensing slightly with each sound of the landing thrusters or the shifting of equipment. Eric spoke in quiet tones, explaining the ship, the controls, the lights. He didn't know if the child understood his words, but it listened, eyes wide, absorbing everything like a sponge. Once aboard, Eric plotted a course for the capital of the alien empire. It was risky. The empire, known as the Thalric's Dominion, had strict rules regarding contact with orphaned or rogue aliens. Citizens who defied these rules often disappeared. Yet Eric's mind was made up. The child needed protection, and if the Queen herself saw what he had found, perhaps she would understand. Days passed in tense silence. The child adapted quickly, moving through the ship with surprising grace. It watched the controls, the displays, even the small personal quarters, absorbing information in a way that reminded Eric of his own childhood fascination with machines and exploration. Occasionally it would hum softly, a sound that seemed musical, calming. Eric could not help but smile despite the worry gnawing at him. He remembered the stories humans told about themselves, how they had survived the harshest environments, how their ingenuity had allowed them to conquer space. He wondered if the child sensed that same determination in him, that same stubbornness, that refused to abandon the weak or the helpless. The approach to the capital was tense. Imperial patrols scanned for unauthorized ships, and humans were often treated with suspicion. Eric had planned every detail, but the anxiety was unavoidable. He checked the child's pulse, noticed how it mirrored his own anticipation, and whispered again, "We're almost there. Just a little longer." The capital's surface was dense with towers and spires that shimmered under the alien sun. Patrol ships circled constantly, their sensors tuned to detect intruders. Eric managed to land on a small platform near the central palace. Guards immediately surrounded him, their weapons raised, their eyes narrow. Arik stepped forward, holding the child carefully. "I bring a matter of importance for the Queen herself," he said, voice steady despite the racing of his heart. "A child, a lost life form of your species, alone, intelligent, and extraordinary." The guards exchanged glances but allowed him through. The child's eyes widened at the towering structures, the alien shapes, the colors that seemed impossible to human eyes. It reached out toward the palace gates, and Eric held it close. Inside, the Queen awaited. She was tall, regal, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Her gaze fell on the child, and for the first time in centuries, curiosity overcame caution. The child looked back at her, unafraid, almost expectant. Arik stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Your Majesty, I found this child alone, lost on a distant moon. I knew it was forbidden, but I could not leave it there. It is intelligent and remarkable in ways I cannot fully explain." The Queen studied the child. The court was silent. The guards' hands hovered near their weapons, tense. The child tilted its head, and a faint glow pulsed along its skin. The Queen's expression shifted, interest, curiosity, and then something more profound. Something that hinted at discovery. "Bring it closer," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but it carried authority. Eric stepped forward, holding the child before her. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The court waited, the air thick with tension. The child reached out one small hand, and the Queen bent slightly, letting it hover near her own. A faint energy shimmered between them, invisible to all but unmistakable in its effect. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, a flash of recognition, or perhaps understanding. She leaned back, studying the child carefully. This is unusual. Far more than what the laws anticipate," she murmured. Her advisors shifted uneasily, whispering among themselves. The child's presence challenged every rule they had lived by. Eric remained silent, watching the Queen, sensing that something monumental had just begun. He did not know what the future held, but he understood this. The child had changed everything, and perhaps humanity's stubborn courage had done so as well. The Queen gestured for Eric to stay. "We will observe, carefully, but I sense there is more here than anyone has realized. Much more." The child looked at her, then at Eric, then back at her. And for the first time, Eric felt hope, not just for the child, but for humanity, for the unknown, and for the extraordinary possibilities that lay ahead. The court murmured, but the Queen raised a hand, silencing all. "We will begin tonight," she said. "There are questions that must be answered, and I intend to find them." Eric nodded, feeling the weight of what he had done. He had broken rules, defied laws, and risked everything, but the spark in the child's eyes told him it was worth it. Somewhere deep inside, He knew this was only the beginning of something much larger than any human, any alien, or even the galaxy itself had yet imagined. And as the palace lights dimmed and the child settled calmly in Eric's arms, he whispered once more, softly, "We'll face it together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Outside, the stars shone quietly, as if watching, waiting to see what would happen when humanity and the extraordinary collided. The palace halls were quiet, but the air thrummed with unspoken tension. Guards moved in silent patrols, their steps echoing across the polished floors, while advisors whispered behind closed doors. The child sat in a small chamber near the queen, observing everything with bright, intelligent eyes. Eric remained nearby, watching over the child as one would a precious treasure, aware that every second counted. The queen, seated on her elevated throne, watched silently. Her expression was unreadable, but her mind raced with questions. She had seen many things in her long life: rebellions, strange artifacts, lost species. But nothing like this child. Its presence felt different, almost alive in ways that laws and science could not yet explain. Scientists and scholars arrived, summoned by the Queen's command. They carried devices designed to scan, measure, and categorize life forms. They expected to find another ordinary alien species, perhaps weak, perhaps fragile. But the child defied their instruments. Its vital signs were unusual, fluctuating in ways that suggested intelligence far beyond its years. When touched gently by a sensor probe, the child emitted a faint pulse of light, and the readings spiked unpredictably. The head scientist frowned. "Your Majesty, these readings are unprecedented. I have never seen energy patterns like this in any species within the Dominion." The Queen remained silent, her sharp eyes studying the child. "And yet it is not human," she said softly, almost to herself.
"It is neither fully like us, nor like anything we know."
She leaned forward slightly. "Perhaps it is something more, something hidden in its very being." Auric watched the Queen carefully. He had expected suspicion, perhaps even anger, but not this fascination. She was not looking at the child as a threat, nor even as an anomaly. She was studying it as if the child held secrets she had long sought. Days passed in careful observation. The child learned quickly. It mimicked the gestures of Eric, copying his movements, his expressions, even the way he spoke to it. Each interaction seemed to unlock something new, small bursts of light pulsing along its skin. When the Queen herself approached, the child's eyes widened, and a faint glow spread across its hands. "Curious," she murmured.
"It reacts differently when near humans."
The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. "Your Majesty, I must remind you, its reactions are unpredictable." "We cannot know what it is capable of," one warned. "It could be dangerous." The Queen raised a hand to silence them. "Dangerous is not always destructive," she said calmly. "Sometimes it is a sign of power. Sometimes it is a sign of potential." Eric felt a flicker of hope. For the first time since he had found the child, he believed that the Queen might see what he had felt all along, that this child was extraordinary, not because of where it came from, but because of what it could become. As the days went on, the child began to show abilities that astonished even the Queen. When Eric placed a small device on the floor, something as simple as a mechanical puzzle, the child quickly manipulated it, solving problems far beyond what a human toddler could achieve. When sensors measured its brain activity, the readings spiked in patterns that suggested advanced computation, rapid adaptation, and an uncanny intuition. The Queen herself conducted private tests. She sat across from the child, asking questions she did not expect it to answer. To her astonishment, the child responded, not in words, but through subtle gestures, expressions, and pulses of light that seemed almost like thought made visible. She realized that the child was not only intelligent but capable of understanding concepts that even her own advisors struggled with. "Remarkable," she whispered. "It perceives things differently." It sees connections that we cannot see. Eric watched from the corner of the room, noting how the child seemed to respond more vividly when he interacted with it. Simple gestures, a touch on the shoulder, a nod, a smile, would trigger bursts of light and subtle shifts in its behavior. The scientists had not predicted this. The child seemed to recognize Eric as something more than just a caretaker. It saw him as a guide, a teacher, perhaps even a key to unlocking its own potential. Rumors began to circulate in the palace. Courtiers whispered about the child's abilities, speculating about its origins and the reasons the queen had allowed it to remain. Some feared it. Others were fascinated, and the queen, ever patient, observed all of it quietly, knowing that she had stumbled upon something far greater than a simple curiosity. Late one night, the queen summoned Eric to her chambers. The child rested nearby, calm and observant. The queen's voice was soft but firm. "Captain Vance, I need you to understand something. This child is more than an anomaly. I believe it carries knowledge that could change the Dominion, perhaps even the galaxy, and I suspect that humans are connected to it in ways we cannot yet comprehend." Arik blinked, taken aback. "Connected?" "How, Your Majesty?" The queen leaned back, her gaze fixed on the child. "It responds to you, to human thought, human presence, in ways it does not respond to any of us. I believe your species unlocks something latent within it, something that has lain dormant for centuries." Eric felt a surge of pride, mixed with unease. Humans were often underestimated by the Thalrics, seen as fragile, reckless, and limited. And yet here he stood, a simple human, having crossed laws, risked life and career, and somehow revealing a truth that the queen herself had never imagined. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The child's abilities continued to grow, and the queen began planning careful experiments to test its limits. She asked questions that none of her advisors would dare. What could the child do with guidance from a human mind? How far could its intelligence expand? Could it become a bridge between species, a new form of cooperation that might change the balance of power? One afternoon, the palace erupted into chaos. A minor diplomatic incident, a rival alien faction attempting to smuggle forbidden technology, triggered alarms. The queen's guards moved swiftly, but in the confusion, the child reacted in a way that stunned everyone. It manipulated the palace systems, using its strange glowing abilities to redirect energy flows and disable security measures that would have trapped intruders. The advisors panicked. "Your Majesty, this is dangerous! The child is unpredictable!" The queen remained calm, her eyes on the child.
"No, it is not dangerous."
"It is exceptional. It is learning." Eric watched, heart pounding, as the child continued to act with precision, anticipation, and insight. Every move it made was logical, yet no protocol could explain it. No species in the Dominion had ever demonstrated such abilities, and with every passing moment it became clear that the child's power was amplified by Eric's presence, by his guidance, his trust, and the human way of thinking that the Thalrics had never understood. That evening, as the chaos settled, the queen summoned Eric again. "You see now," she said, her voice quiet but filled with wonder, "that your people, your humanity, is more than I ever realized. You unlock potential where none existed. You see paths and possibilities that my advisors cannot. And this child is a mirror of that truth." Eric swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. Humans had always relied on their wits, their courage, their ability to think differently in moments of danger. Now, in an alien empire that prided itself on order and logic, that very same human quality had revealed something extraordinary. The child sat between them, glowing faintly, as if understanding the magnitude of the queen's realization. Its eyes flickered toward Arik, then back at the queen, and for the first time Eric understood that the child had recognized its own importance, not as a tool, not as a curiosity, but as a being capable of shaping the future. The Queen's mind raced with possibilities. She could see a new era forming, one in which humans and aliens could cooperate in ways previously unimaginable. The child was the key, and humans were the catalyst. And yet, she also knew the dangers. Political rivals, conservative advisors, factions within the Empire who would not tolerate such disruption. For now, though, she allowed herself to simply watch, to observe, and to learn. The child's abilities continued to grow, each day revealing more about the strange, untapped potential that lay within it. And Eric, who had risked everything to save this lost life, began to realize that he was part of something far bigger than himself. That night, as the palace lights dimmed and quiet settled over the halls, the Queen lingered in her chambers. She gazed at the child sleeping peacefully, glowing softly under the alien starlight that streamed through the windows. Her mind was alive with questions, calculations, and visions of a future she could barely comprehend. "This changes everything," she whispered to herself. "Everything I have ever known, everything I have believed, it may all be wrong. And yet, it may also be the beginning of something far greater than we ever imagined." Outside, the stars shone with a brilliance that seemed almost alive, mirroring the potential that now flickered within the palace walls. And somewhere in the quiet, Eric felt it too. The weight of discovery, the thrill of possibility, and the knowledge that the universe had just become far more interesting than he had ever believed. The child stirred in its sleep, eyes flickering open briefly. A small hand reached out, as if sensing the vastness of the world it had just entered. And in that moment, both the Queen and Eric understood that this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge every law, every belief, and every expectation they had ever held. Humanity, Eric realized, had a way of showing up in the most unlikely places and changing everything. The palace was alive with tension. For days, the court had been buzzing with whispers, debates, and quiet arguments about the child. Some advisors feared it, calling it a threat to tradition, while others were fascinated, seeing a chance to unlock knowledge lost for centuries. But the Queen had long stopped listening to idle opinions. She had seen what the child could do, and she had begun to understand something extraordinary. Humans were the key. Captain Eric Vance moved quietly through the halls, the child's small hand gripping his. The glow along its skin pulsed gently, in rhythm with the child's breathing, and he could feel the energy radiating from it. He had learned to trust the child's instincts, and it had learned to trust him. Together they were more than just human and alien. They were a team, a bridge between worlds. The Queen summoned them to the central chamber. Its high ceilings and crystalline walls reflected light in shimmering patterns, creating a surreal, almost magical atmosphere. She sat upon her throne, her eyes sharp but tinged with curiosity and something deeper, anticipation. "Captain Vance," she said, her voice steady, "the time has come to see how far your influence reaches. The child has abilities unlike anything the Dominion has known, but I believe it responds to you in ways we cannot yet measure." Arik nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and unease. He had expected to be seen as reckless, a human who had broken rules and endangered himself. Instead, the Queen spoke with respect, even acknowledgement. He glanced at the child, who tilted its head, curious and alert, sensing the shift in the Queen's tone. The chamber doors opened suddenly, and a group of rival alien envoys entered. Their faces were hard, their expressions filled with disdain. "Your Majesty," one said, his voice icy, "this human and this child are an affront to the laws. The Dominion has rules, and they have been broken. We demand that action be taken immediately." The Queen's eyes narrowed, but she remained calm. "I am aware of the laws," she replied, "and I am aware of what is possible." "This child is not a threat. It is a discovery." "And Captain Vance has shown courage, intelligence, and loyalty," qualities that even your species undervalues. The envoys bristled.
It is not your choice alone. The laws are clear.
This human could have endangered the entire empire by interfering with alien life. The child's glow pulsed brighter. It stood slowly, small and fragile as it seemed. Yet the air in the chamber shifted. The envoys felt it, a subtle vibration of power that was hard to define. They had never encountered a being so small, so seemingly innocent, that radiated such control. Eric stepped forward, voice steady.
I understand the rules.
I broke them. But I saw life at risk, and I could not ignore it. That is what humans do. We take responsibility when others would stand by and wait for orders. We act, the Queen observed quietly, impressed. She had always valued logic and strategy, but there was something about humans, their courage, their intuition, their willingness to risk everything for what they believed in, that even the most disciplined alien minds could not anticipate. And here, that human courage was amplifying the child's latent potential. The child's skin shimmered brighter now, the pulses of light almost in response to Eric's words. With a sudden movement, it raised its small hands, and the chamber's crystalline walls began to vibrate. A pattern of energy formed along the surfaces, forming symbols and lines that no one recognized. The envoys gasped. The energy was controlled, precise, and intelligent.
It reacts to him,
one whispered. The child. It listens to the human. Yes, the Queen said softly, almost to herself. And it is learning. It is evolving faster than we can comprehend. And the human, he is the catalyst. The envoys demanded the child be removed, insisting that it was dangerous. The Queen rose slowly from her throne, her gaze sharp and unyielding.
No, this child is under my protection.
It will not be harmed, nor will it be taken from us. And you will leave before I consider your presence an act of defiance. They hesitated, sensing the authority and the power in her voice. The child's glow seemed to intensify, filling the chamber with a gentle but undeniable force. Finally, the envoys bowed stiffly and retreated, leaving silence in their wake. The Queen turned to Eric and the child. You see now, Captain, the nature of what we have. Your people are unpredictable, adaptable, capable of seeing solutions in moments when others freeze. The child has potential we never imagined, and it responds to human thought in ways that no algorithm, no law, and no tradition can measure. Eric's chest swelled with pride. Humans had often been underestimated, seen as fragile, reckless, and limited. And yet here, in the heart of an alien empire, human courage and ingenuity had proven not only valuable, but essential. The next days were a series of tests, experiments, and lessons. The Queen allowed Eric to teach the child, guiding it through puzzles, strategies, and problem-solving exercises. Each session revealed more of the child's astonishing abilities: rapid learning, predictive thinking, the ability to manipulate energy fields with precision, and a subtle empathy that allowed it to anticipate the needs and intentions of others. The Queen observed closely, noting the patterns. She realized that without human guidance, the child's abilities were limited, fragmented. But with Eric, the child flourished, demonstrating creativity and innovation that neither species alone could achieve. She began to see a vision of the future, one where humans and aliens worked together, unlocking potentials that had been dormant for eons. Then came the test that no one anticipated. A rival faction of the Dominion launched a covert attack on the capital. They sought to capture the child, believing it to be a weapon of unimaginable power. The alarms blared, and chaos erupted in the palace. The Queen's advisors panicked, unsure how to respond. The child, however, reacted instinctively. It moved with speed and precision, manipulating energy flows, rerouting power, and creating protective barriers. Eric directed it, guiding its actions, and together they outmaneuvered the attackers. using strategy, foresight, and intuition that even seasoned soldiers could not match. The battle was brief, but decisive. The attackers were repelled, their ships disabled, and the palace intact. The Queen stood in the aftermath, her mind racing with realization. Humans were not just allies, they were catalysts, amplifiers of potential, agents of change. The child had been extraordinary, but it was the human presence that had unlocked its true power. Eric looked at the child, who now sat quietly, exhausted but alert, its glow dimming to a soft, steady pulse. He smiled and whispered, "We did it. Together." The Queen approached, her eyes thoughtful.
Captain Vance, your species, you are remarkable.
You think differently. You act when others hesitate. You inspire those around you. And in doing so, you bring out potential in ways that logic alone cannot predict. Eric bowed slightly, humbled by her words. Your Majesty, I only did what any human would do. I could not leave the child alone. I could not ignore the chance to save a life. The Queen nodded, her gaze returning to the child. And in doing so, you have changed the course of this empire. You have shown us that humans are more than we believed, more than we allowed ourselves to understand. You are exceptional. For the first time, Eric felt that the distance between humans and the Dominion had shrunk. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and the weight of centuries of rules and tradition. And yet human courage had prevailed. The child had learned, adapted, and revealed its true potential. And the Queen had learned something equally profound. Humans were not merely outsiders. They were essential to the future. That night, the Queen summoned her advisors and spoke for the first time about the implications. The child is extraordinary, but it is not alone in its potential. Humans possess qualities we cannot replicate: intuition, courage, creativity, and compassion. These are strengths we must recognize and integrate if we are to survive the challenges ahead. The advisors murmured among themselves, some in agreement, some in doubt. But the Queen's decision was clear. Prepare for a new era. We will work with humans, learn from them, and allow them to guide the child. Together we may discover secrets that have lain hidden for millennia. Auric and the child watched from a distance, unaware that their actions had already begun to reshape the empire. The child's glow pulsed softly, a reflection of both its own potential and the human influence that had unlocked it. Eric placed a gentle hand on its shoulder.
"We're just getting started,"
he said quietly.
The Queen observed them, a small, thoughtful smile on her face.
She had discovered something that would change everything. The combination of human courage and the child's extraordinary abilities could shift the balance of power, spark new discoveries, and perhaps even change the future of the galaxy. And in that moment, all three of them understood that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, dangers, and unknowns. But they also understood something more important. Together, humans and the child could achieve what no one else could. They were unstoppable. Not because they were powerful, but because they were daring, intelligent, and willing to act when others hesitated. The stars outside the palace shimmered, as if acknowledging the beginning of a new era, and within the quiet chambers, human courage and alien potential had joined, forming a force that neither the Dominion nor the galaxy had ever seen before. For Eric, the child, and the Queen, the future had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun rose over the crystal towers of the capital, painting the palace in a spectrum of shimmering colors. The city hummed with life, but inside the central chamber there was a quiet sense of anticipation. The Queen sat in her throne, her gaze steady, her mind alive with possibilities. Today was the day she would act on the knowledge she had gained, knowledge that had come from a human, a child, and the bond they had formed. Captain Eric Vance stood beside the child, who clutched his hand tightly. The glow along its skin pulsed gently, a reflection of its alertness and intelligence. as they had trained together for months, tested together, and faced dangers that neither had expected. And now, the Queen intended to see the full potential of what they could achieve. "Captain," the Queen said, her voice calm yet commanding, "today we will explore what you and this child can accomplish together. The Dominion has rules, traditions, and limitations, but you have shown us that there is more to existence than obedience. There is innovation, creativity, and courage. These are the qualities that will shape our future." Eric bowed slightly. "I understand, Your Majesty." "I'll do my best." The child tilted its head, watching the Queen carefully, as if understanding the weight of her words. Then, with a soft glow spreading from its hands, it stepped forward. The Queen gestured for the advisors to begin the observation. Scientists, strategists, and scholars watched closely, their instruments ready, their minds racing to understand what was about to unfold. Eric led the child to a device that resembled a puzzle of energy and light. It was a training apparatus designed to measure the child's abilities, but the Queen had made modifications. The device would respond to thought patterns, energy manipulation, and problem-solving skills. The child's glow brightened as it approached the device. Eric guided it gently, showing it how to interact with the controls. At first, the responses were small, lights shifting, minor energy flows. But soon, the child began to improvise. It combined sequences the machine had never been programmed for, creating patterns that resonated with energy across the chamber. The advisors gasped. "It's evolving," one whispered. "It's creating something new." "Yes," the Queen said, leaning forward, "and notice how it responds to the human beside it. Without him, it would be limited. With him, it exceeds everything we know." Eric smiled, watching the child. "You ready? Show him what you can do." The child's glow intensified, pulsing rhythmically. It raised its hands, and energy arcs began to form between the crystalline walls of the chamber. Symbols appeared, floating in the air, shifting and changing in ways that seemed almost alive. The child's mind worked in tandem with Eric's guidance. Each gesture, each command perfectly synchronized. "This is incredible," one of the lead scientists said. "It's not just manipulating energy. It's creating new structures, new patterns that we cannot understand yet." The Queen nodded, her eyes gleaming with realization. "This is more than power," she said. "It is creation, innovation, potential. And it is humanity that unlocks it." Suddenly, alarms sounded throughout the palace. The rival faction, still smarting from their previous defeat, had launched a coordinated attack. This time, they were not content to probe. They intended to take the child, and by doing so, destabilize the Empire. Eric looked at the Queen. "We've faced this before. We can do it again." The Queen's lips curved into a small smile. "I expected nothing less."
You have taught us a lesson in courage, Captain. Go."
The child's glow surged, brighter than ever before. Together, Auric and the child moved with precision, navigating the chamber, activating defenses, and rerouting energy flows. What the advisors feared as a potential disaster became a display of ingenuity and coordination. Energy shields rose, corridors shifted, and traps were activated, not as punishment, but as strategy. The attackers entered the palace, confident in their plan, only to find themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Auric directed the child, pointing, gesturing, whispering suggestions, while the child executed them with flawless accuracy. Their actions were more than physical, they were mental, a fusion of human intuition and alien potential. The attackers faltered, confusion spreading among their ranks. They had anticipated rules, predictability, and fear, but what they faced was unpredictability, creativity, and courage. Every move was unexpected. Every strategy countered before it could be executed. In the central chamber, the Queen watched, her heart steady but her mind racing. She realized then, fully and completely, what she had known all along. Humans were not simply a species to tolerate. They were catalysts. They inspired, they unlocked potential. They changed outcomes in ways no other being could. The child, working in harmony with Eric, created an energy barrier that encased the invaders. The barrier did not harm them, it simply immobilized them, containing them safely while the palace guards arrived to escort them away. The chamber erupted into applause, not from the advisors, but from the queen herself. She stood, her voice ringing with authority and pride. "This is proof," she declared. "Humans are essential to the survival and progress of the Dominion. They are catalysts of potential, not merely observers. They inspire those around them to rise above limitations, to innovate, and to achieve the impossible." Eric felt a surge of pride. Humans had often been underestimated, but here, in the heart of an alien empire, their courage, creativity, and compassion had saved lives, protected the child, and revealed potential that no one had imagined. The child's glow softened as the crisis ended. It looked up at Eric, small hands reaching out. Eric knelt and hugged it gently. "We did it," he whispered. "Together." The queen approached them, her gaze filled with a rare warmth.
"You have changed the course of history," she said.
"Not only by saving the child, but by showing us the value of humanity. Your courage, your determination, and your ability to act when others hesitate. These are qualities we must embrace, not fear." For the first time, the child reached out to the queen. Its small hand hovered near hers, and a gentle glow pulsed between them. The queen's eyes widened. She could feel it, the connection, the intelligence, the potential that the child carried. And she understood that this was not merely a matter of survival or politics. This was evolution, a new beginning. "Prepare the integration," she commanded. "Humans will take their place in key roles within the Dominion. We will learn from them. We will work with them. And together, we will unlock possibilities that have been dormant for centuries." Auric and the child exchanged a look, both understanding the significance of her words. They were not just participants. They were pioneers, the bridge between species, the spark of a new era. The palace erupted with activity in the following days. Humans were brought into advisory positions, learning from the Dominion while teaching their own strategies and methods. The child continued to grow, its abilities expanding with every interaction, every lesson, every challenge. And everywhere the child went, Auric was there, guiding, supporting, and inspiring. The queen observed all of it, her vision of the future coming into focus. The Dominion was changing, not because of conquest or technology alone, but because humans had shown a different path, a path of courage, creativity, and compassion. And at the center of it all was a child, extraordinary and unique, whose potential had been unlocked by the simplest yet most powerful force, humanity. Months later, the capital was transformed. The city thrived as humans and aliens worked side by side. New technologies emerged, strategies improved, and the Dominion became stronger, not through fear or control, but through cooperation and innovation. And through it all, Auric and the child remained at the heart of it, guiding, learning, and showing the galaxy what could happen when humans refused to follow limitations and instead dared to act. The queen visited them one quiet evening. The child sat between them, glowing softly, a reflection of its calm and intelligence. She smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "You have done more than save a life," she said. "You have shown us what is possible when courage meets opportunity. You have changed everything." Eric looked at the child, then at the queen, and nodded. "Sometimes it just takes one step," he said softly. "One choice, one action. That's all it takes to change the future." The child reached out, a small hand resting on the queen's arm, and a faint pulse of light spread gently. The queen felt it, a promise, a beginning. a connection between species that could never be broken. Outside, the stars shone in quiet brilliance, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. And for the first time, the Dominion, the humans, and the child all understood that the future was theirs to shape, together. No law, no tradition, no fear could stop it. Humanity had arrived, and it had made all the difference. And so began a new era, one of exploration, innovation, and collaboration. One in which humans were no longer outsiders, but essential, catalysts of potential, and the spark that ignited change. The Queen had discovered a truth that would endure for generations. When courage meets opportunity, even the smallest actions can change the universe. Eric smiled as he looked at the child. "We did it," he whispered again, "and this is only the beginning." The child's glow shimmered brightly, pulsing like the heartbeat of a new era, and the galaxy, vast and mysterious, waited for the story that humans had just begun to write.